project, costuming horror stories. Yes, as a costumer, we have all had a series of unfortunate events.
But we learn from every mistake.
Exactly. So we're here to share with you our horror stories, as well as hopefully pass on to you the wisdom that we have learned to deal with those issues. So, Diana, how about you? Would you like to?
My name is Diana. I am a writer. I'm also a costumer. And the thing is with me is I get interested in something and I learn everything about it and then I do it too. And it makes a very busy life, but it's really fun. Yeah.
And I'm Kellie Springer. I've been a costumer for well over 20 years. I have a degree in technical theater from the University of Arizona. And I've been cosplaying for the last 10 years. So.
I think I've been cosplaying before it was a term.
Yeah, before it was a term, I didn't realize.
Because like I saw Star Wars in the theaters. The summer I was 15, I went to the theater every weekend. And all day Saturday, I just stayed in the theater watching Star Wars. And that gave me a passion for Princess Leia, because that was the one female protagonist, right? And she was so brave and daring and cute.
And a smartass.
Smartass. And she was like, oh, this is perfect. So I had to make a costume. And it took forever because I needed to find the fabric that flowed just like her fabric. And I needed to do right around the collar is where they joined the hood. And I also noticed that the bottom of the hood is not closed. It's open. And so, I mean, all of these little details I noticed watching, and I would take notes in the theater because I was obsessed. And that's where I started.
See, we would go to the drive-in to see it every week or so because my mother adored it. Me, I was Han Solo.
Okay.
Because I was a tomboy and I was 9. Yeah. Or no,
I was
7.
15.
I was 7.
I wanted Princess
Leia. I thought Han Solo was awesome. So yeah, I wanted a vest.
Yeah. Did you figure out how to make one?
I was only 7.
Oh, okay.
So at that point in time. So, but later, now I make vests.
Yeah.
So, what is one of the most horrific experiences that has happened to you when you've been costuming?
Well, see, I know how to sew. And I learned, they had classes in middle school. I always know how to sew a line because we had sewing machines at my house. If I wanted to make doll clothes or whatever, I would figure it out. So you know how to sew, but I didn't know how to sew. Okay, so I was in theater. When we were in Japan, there was a little theater group that my friend Terry, she became my friend, but she had been in theater in college. And so she had wanted to start this group, and it's like I was the core because I was really interested in doing theater again. And so she says, okay, so we're gonna start this theater group. And so we were doing plays, and she decided she wanted to do a children's play. And I said, oh, there's no part for me in that. She goes, you can do costuming. And I'm like, well, I mean, I can sew. And she goes, yes, but you need to know how to sew, right? That. And she says, so you're gonna do all the children's costumes. And I'm like, are you sure I can do this? And she goes, yes, 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 you can do this, it'll be fun. So 2 weeks, I get the fabric 2 weeks before the show is to go on. There are 25 children. Oh. Okay, 5 of them are special costumes that are all monsters that they name the monsters, but they don't tell you what they look like. So I have to come up with different monster outfits for each of these children. And then primary colors of pants and skirts with white blouses for boys and girls. And I have 2 weeks, and let me tell you, that's all I did, morning to night, and well into the night. And I would wake up early with a start because I wasn't done. And I did get those costumes done, but I did learn to sew because you learn the shortcuts, you learn what all of the words mean on the patterns, you learn all of that stuff, and then you just say, you know what, forget this pattern, I know what the shape is now, I can just cut this out to that size, I'm not gonna fool with this. And that's I got thrown into the pool. And I had to learn to swim.
Yes, oh my goodness. Hopefully, were there any wardrobe malfunctions?
No.
Okay, good.
No, it was fine. It was amazingly all fine.
for myself, I was self-taught, and but I wanted to learn to sew, you know, so I actually took a class at the U of A, and because they had disbanded the textiles department, and I'm like, great, where am I going? All right, I want to learn more how, you know, so I took a theater class, and the lab taught you to sew, and of course it was historical costume. Oh my God. It was prehistoric through Renaissance, and I'm like, I'm in love. I switched majors.
But theatrical costumes are different than reproduction.
Yes, they are dramatically different. They follow different rules.
They just have to look right. They don't have to be right.
Exactly.
If you get into the SCA or some of the reenactment groups, you want it to be right as much as you can.
Yes, and you have a lot more issues you have to deal with. Like, I remember one time I was doing summer stock theater in Kansas, and it was for the Music Theater of Wichita, and we were doing 7 Brides or 7 Brothers. So, which is great, but have you all seen 7 Brides or 7 Brothers?
There's 14
No?
named
Okay.
characters.
Well,
Yeah, sounds good.
at the barn raising, there's a dance. Okay, and in the movie, all the brothers wear these wonderful Western style shirts that have the button,
Right.
the square
bib.
button, the bib
Yeah.
front,
Yeah.
okay, with the buttons and stuff. Well, our designer, you know, and each with their own color, so they can match their lady, you know. So our designer wanted to do that too. Well, and I was the buyer, actually. I was a buyer and a stitcher, so I would go out, source the fabric, and purchase it, and then I would, you know, stitch after everything was bought. So I've been sourcing gold buttons, like the design, no, it's not right. It's not right. So I spent like far too long trying to find the right buttons in a massive amount of quantity.
Well,
In Kansas.
these are perfect, but there's only 7.
Exactly, in like Wichita. You know, we're not going to discuss what year.
Because there was no eBay yet, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So
eBay
a
has
mail
helped
order was,
so
you know.
much.
So they actually we make the shirts, we make all of the stuff, and they have a dress rehearsal.
There's no buttons.
No, the buttons are on.
Oh, good.
But during the dress rehearsal, one of the ladies got her hair caught in the buttons during the dance number and ripped out a lock of her hair. Buttons are gone.
Oh my God, after all of that.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, like, okay, so we bought some paint, we painted on the buttons and switched them to snaps.
But yeah, but that's the thing is you can do that in theater.
Exactly.
Right, so cosplay, for instance, is a whole other story because people are going to be up close and personal. They're going to see this is just painted on. Okay, well, whatever. And for me, I'm not that person. But if it's for a theater production, sure, it's a shortcut.
But you know, as horror stories goes, that you know,
Yeah.
the actress was fine.
All of that
She
worked.
was, but
She had a short.
yeah, it was just, you know, one of the looks was, you know, so
Nothing really visible, I would hope.
no,
Just comb it over, honey.
Yeah, it wasn't like, you know, it was like, you know, so she was okay, but
Oh my God.
yeah, I mean, horror stories of costuming, you know, it's like that can, you know, that will, and you have to adapt.
It was all for nothing, but you know, you at least, I guess you have all those buttons now.
Yeah, well, yeah, so they kept the buttons in stock for the, but when the horror stories happen, the costumer has to go, well, okay, this terrible thing has happened, how are we going to fix it? And oftentimes it's with no time.
Yeah, everyone is sitting there frantically painting and passing on the next one, and the other one's putting the snap on, and the next one is sewing as quickly as they can. You know, the line of people sewing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like that.
And that's, you know, so while unfortunately this happened, and, you know, but we found a way around it. And it works for stage because, of course, it was just the visual,
Right.
you know, and you can create a depth by putting in a shadow. But safety first, right? Wear your goggles. So, how about do you have any other horror stories
So
like
many.
that?
There are so many. I can't even, I don't know where. There's one, I was doing a dress, it was a 2-person play. I was the co-star and also the costumer, which was fine, because it was a small group. So the lady that I was costuming, I mean, I'm like a size 10, okay? She's like a size 2 or 0 or something, and she's so gorgeous, and it's like, okay, this is great. So they get this dress, they find this pattern for this dress, and they give me the fabric, and it's this lovely jersey that will be all clingy, and I cannot make heads or tails of this. The pattern is like, things are just going like this and all over here, and it's like modern art, and I'm like, how is this supposed to go together? And I just follow directions, and I'm like, this is really weird. And then the
directions aren't always very good.
The last seam is sewn, and I'm like, this is going to be terrible. I turn it inside out, and it's this really neat dress. It was just magical. I don't know how that worked. I honestly, to this day, would like to see that pattern again, because I still don't know how they did. I don't know.
Well, so then that's not a horror. That was just like the journey through the darkness.
The journey was horrible, and I was positive it was going to be a failure. But then it was this lovely, clean dress that looked great on her, and it's like, okay, yay, you're a genius, Diana. Yeah.
So oftentimes, especially if the theater, you have a deadline or you have a con, and you're doing everything you can to get a costume done in a really short amount of time, okay? You can be very tempted to put late hours into it. Just be careful. Like, I was working, it was a different summer stock. It was actually, I was at the U of A. I was still working for the library, and I was working for the theater, and I was in a Shakespeare in the Park production of Romeo and Juliet.
That's too much.
As cast. Well, they had actually also asked me to be the designer, the costume designer. And I'm like, oh, I'd love to, but I can't. I'm already in the production, and I'm holding down 2 jobs right now, so I can continue to go to college. So they get another designer, use the term loosely, and she's not really a designer in any way, shape, or form.
They just got someone.
Did you
have to fix her?
Oh my God! It was the lead had actually already been in a Taming of the Shrew for a different company. So we were fortunate enough to get the costumes for her Taming of the Shrew for Romeo and Juliet. However, the designer took affront at this, even though she does not know how to sew, and there was no way she was actually going to get even the principal costumes done. The costume was Italian Renaissance, so it had, and it was designed to have the puffs and ribbon. So the director himself went and bought grosgrain ribbon for the dress in the color that he'd chosen, like the Capulets were in like purples and lavenders, and the
yeah, that's a stage trick.
Yeah,
where you have teams and they have the same color tones.
Yeah, and then the other family was was greens and stuff. So, and I was technically on the green side. So I was making my own bodice, but she took this ribbon and she just sliced it up the middle. This is grosgrain. I don't know if you know what grosgrain is, but that basically she has destroyed this ribbon. It will just completely unravel. And the director himself had bought it. And so they're like, so great. So not only am I holding down 2 jobs, I'm in the show, now I'm basically fixing everybody's costumes at the same time. And made my own. So yeah, that was a horror story. And one thing, I was up super late one night trying to make a waist cincher for one of the actresses, because we just need something kind of, and
Renaissance-ish.
And I was sewing far too late into the evening, and I had gingers, and these are big heavy-duty steel scissors.
Yes, I had some.
And I was using them inappropriately because I'm not in a workshop. I'm at my home, at my dining room table. So I'm trying to use it like an awl, and I wound up, and I was exhausted, I wound up slicing through my own finger.
Did you have to go to the emergency room?
I should have, but I was so tired that I go, oh, perhaps I should go to sleep now.
Oh.
I took a paper towel, just wrapped it around my finger and went to sleep.
You could have bled out.
Fortunately, it didn't go all the way to the but yes, I actually have a little scar. It's faded over time, but
This is Gareth.
yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes, sorry.
Our other panelists. So just to finish it's like really pay attention to your own physical health as well, because
Just get up early the next day. Don't work too late.
exactly, you know, even though the pressure can be, you can create your own horror story just from that. So, but here, can I go ahead and
We're
introduce
talking
yourself?
about horror stories.
Costuming horror stories.
So, the majority of my horror stories come more from the people that I have made costumes with rather than myself, just because I am super paranoid of cutting myself or injuring myself in any way. So no matter what I'm doing,
Yeah,
I'm
now
constantly
you're
thinking
gonna-
about
That was the
what-
only time.
But yeah, no, I've had, strangely enough, the thing that happens with me a lot, I don't know if it's bad luck or whatever it is, but I've worked on several costumes where the minute I leave the room to do something as mundane as getting some drink from the kitchen or whatever I'm doing, if there's someone else working with me, there's a high probability that they will just decide to slice themselves with scissors. And I will hear some sort of a yell from the next room, and I come in and I don't even know what's happened. And that seems to happen a lot. Luckily, I haven't sliced myself, but I mean...
So you're good luck for
Use
that.
scissors responsibly.
Apparently, I don't know, yeah, but also...
Only thing holding chaos back.
Well, maybe chaos when it comes to bleeding. I don't know about other types of chaos.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had... There was one particular instance where we were cutting leather for an Ewok shawl headpiece, whatever they call it, I'm not sure. And really, really simple thing, you know, it's got maybe 1-2 seams at the most, you know, it's not a super complicated thing. You just cut up some leather so it fits over your head and has a hole. You don't even have to finish the edges. The point is that it looks, you know, really tagged up or taggarty. And I'm not entirely sure what happened, but you know, the person that I was working with decided that they were gonna put their finger in the way of the fabric scissors.
Did they cut off their finger?
No.
Oh.
Their finger was still very much attached because luckily they're not like a super strong person, so they realized what happened.
There are scissors that are really like, yeah.
Certain ones are very, very.
I can see them.
These weren't the best fabric scissors because I wouldn't be cutting leather with them.
Yes.
But still, they were sharp, and that was, yeah. The
hospital.
leather was like a, I think it was a suede. It was like a very whitish tan suede.
Not anymore.
It has character now. It's a project. You've bled on it.
Right. But luckily, it was supposed to be dirtied up and look weathered anyway, so it's fine. But
Okay.
that was scary.
Of course, in the theater, if you bleed on a costume, it's supposed to be good luck.
Right.
I think that they
There's
have
a
just
little-
come up with that because.
No, there's this little prayer my friend taught me. She's also a seamstress that is really amazing. She has historical costumes. I don't know if you know Duchess Larissa.
I've heard the name.
Okay, and her name's Trish. And she really did a lot to help me with medieval recreation rather than just theater costuming. Because I'm all ready to take shortcuts. I know all those shortcuts, right? But she's like, no, this is how it's done, and so she's really amazing. But she said, if you prick yourself with a pin or if you're bleeding, put it in the seam allowance, and then say a little blessing on the fabric that may nothing worse than this happen to the person who wears this garment. Which is this sweet thing, and I always do that now because it's like superstition.
Or the edge of the hem before you turn it.
Yeah.
Well, one could also say if the disaster happens in making a garment, then maybe that's all the packing is
Yeah,
gonna have.
right,
Yes.
right. So it's kind of like a superstitious thing for me now, and I always bleed on my projects. So funny.
Well,
we do.
speaking, I was in the kitchen when this particular incident. I was talking about how
Something happened.
literally,
I was out of the room.
I literally left the room and it happened. It wasn't even like a delay. It was the second I walked
Well,
in the
okay,
next
so this
room.
is what I suggest for the future.
Oh, I
You're
have
going
an
to
idea.
leave the room and say, everyone, stop working.
Weapons down.
I'm going to leave the room. When I return, they continue.
Or you know, have everybody come with me. It's like,
Yes,
why don't we
everyone-
all take a break at the
Let's
same
go to
time?
the kitchen. We'll all be safe together.
I must admit, the majority of the time it's the same person.
And you have the first aid kit on site, don't you?
She's an EMT. So
Oh.
Awesome.
Excellent, because it's how we learn from these mistakes.
Right. That's probably why she's a really good EMT.
It's like I've been wearing a really heavy big gown, and I'm not really into what's that, like Tudor or Queen Elizabeth or whatever. I'm not really into that, but I have worn them, and I've had little children that were not part of our group just come up and pick up my skirt to see if it was real.
As opposed to.
Excuse me, I can't hardly see over there.
Cosplay is not consent. Teach them young.
I can't look down, but I know you're doing something. What is it?
I know,
Stop.
with the farthingale out.
I can't see anything. What are you doing? Children, stop.
Have you made it to the cartwheel
Yes,
one?
it was one of the giant ones, and I'm like, why did you put me in this? I don't like this. No, it looks great. Okay.
Yeah, there's quite a few stormtroopers who have similar stories.
Yeah.
So they have their little thermal detonator pack on the back of their belt, right? Some of them mistakenly stick it on with Velcro. Well,
Oh.
it's just about at head height for a lot of kids, and they're kind of like, yoink. And, you know, if you're lucky, you notice it happened. If you're not, the kids run off with it and you'll never see it again. Like, okay.
Well, kids can be really interesting.
That's true.
Yes, I know this because of those 25 children of varying sizes. There was so much elastic. I had no idea I would need that much elastic.
Well, you know, and also for theater, you have usually.
You should get a spool.
Yeah.
You know, I just was going back and forth to the fabric store getting more little packets of elastic. I didn't know any better yet.
True, because yeah, those are the things you have in and you use inch seams for theater
Yeah.
because you don't know if you have to let it out. Whereas I'm like an inch. Oh my god, half inch. I don't even like 5/8. You know, it's like
An inch in
an
theater.
inch. Yeah, and yeah, a minimum of an inch in theater because in case you have to let it
Well,
out.
I was in a play. It was that Christmas Carol. I was in a Christmas Carol, and I wasn't a lead. I was just one of the dancers. Okay, and it was really fun. And I had one of my kids decided he wanted to be in it too. So he was the urchin. I was the lady with the baby. So you know, not even. It was just for fun and just to get more exercise, right? So they had ordered all of the costumes. They didn't have a costume designer. They just ordered them from a costume company. And so we get all these costumes, and they don't really fit right.
No.
And so I'm sitting there, I fixed mine, and they're like, hey, yours looks really good. I go, oh yeah, I took it in. And they're like, will you fix mine? And then pretty soon it's like, oh, Diana will do it. And I'm like, wait,
What?
just a second here, I'm having fun.
Now, because we all cosplay, how about at an event or on site? What type of horror story or have you guys had that you had to like somehow fix or take care of on site?
Well, I always bring loads of safety pins, and I also bring the sticky Velcro and Band-Aids, and I mean, I have like a little first aid kit, and then you have the body tape, so that if you don't want things gaping open, you just tape it, right? So like, I will always have that, but you know, you do have mishaps, or you don't realize how heavy this cloak is until you've walked 2 blocks to get to the convention in the heat, and you're like, oh, this was I made a terrible mistake.
Bad life
today.
choice.
Yes.
So
Mostly for me, it's like, I will bring things and change there. And I usually don't have a lot of problems, but I'm prepared in case I have a problem or someone I see has a problem. It's like, oh honey, your back is, I have safety pins.
how about you, Gareth?
So, yeah, I wouldn't say I've had any one specific issue that was mind-blowingly horrific, but on several occasions, it's always been and it's always been a part of the costume that you cannot fix with safety pins or tape or something like that. Like in my solo belt at one point, one of the rivets that holds the clip popped after about a year of wearing this thing, only to discover that the rivet was never actually set in properly, because it was in a really awkward place that was behind the clip, so it was really hard to get anything in there to actually hammer the rivet in. And I thought it was secure, but apparently it wasn't.
Rivets too.
The screw-in rivets are problematic because, again, there's not enough space to get into the hole in place. I do have another idea I'm going to try, but I've discovered
The super glue it.
I can't, not with this particular setup. With most setups, though, that would be perfect. But actually, what I found, and what I did when I was doing my fan film, wearing the solo costume, at one point, both the rivets that hold the little droid collar deal on the side of the belt just popped, and the whole thing fell off. And I had nothing right in the middle of it. And then I'm sitting there thinking about it for a second, and I had a roll of this foam double-sided tape they use for sticking car paneling details on.
Yeah,
I stuck that on there. That thing was on there for 6 months before I had to fix it.
Oh,
that stuff is great.
And when you're on site, you don't necessarily have everything, you know. Like I'm sure she won't mind. This past weekend was Tucson Comic-Con. Madam Askew, she, when we were getting her dressed, because we just on site for that one, the stay, we were getting her in, and her busk snaps. And
I mean, do you know what the busk is, you guys? When you have a corset, there's the part in the back that you lace up, and there's the part in the front that has the metal prongs.
Strip with the...
It's metal, okay? It's a metal strip. It holds everything straight, right? That's what snapped.
That's what snapped. This is non-repairable.
No.
There is no fixing this. It would take more time. It would be faster and cheaper, practically, to just make a whole new corset than repair this.
It's impossible.
It is pretty,
And it would be easier just to make a new corset.
And she didn't have any alternative at that point. So she actually stayed that day with a broken busk.
Oh my God.
And so,
stab her?
fortunately, no. We forbid her. There was no bending whatsoever in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I mean, you can in a way, like when you're wearing a corset, you can kind of go like this a little bit. Always remember boots before corset.
Exactly.
Okay, because there's no lacing on those things
But
in a corset ever.
there's nothing that can be done for this. But she stayed. She just remained erect the entire time, and then wore one of her old corsets the next day. So, I mean, it could have ended very painfully if she was not careful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, things happen on site sometimes that you can't avoid.
Right, and I think my worst mistakes have been poor shoe choices.
Oh,
Well, these shoes look the best.
and then your feet tell you otherwise.
Then there's blisters and then the bare spot that's being rubbed all day, and you put on a Band-Aid and it doesn't help, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna die.
Breaking your shoes if you can.
Yeah. Or just walk a mile in them or something before you wear them to a convention, because that's the worst. I mean, foot pain just takes over, and you can't even be in character anymore.
Yes.
So yeah, comfortable shoes are essential.
For me, one of the worst things, most awkward things, normally when I wear Victorian, I actually wear the proper underpinnings and I wear split drawers. Well, for one of our Dickens Tees events, I was wearing a Victorian swimsuit. And so there was no split or anything, you know.
Right.
Well,
They're like rompers.
exactly.
With a skirt.
With a skirt over it.
Yeah.
But it's not a super long skirt.
Right.
I had purchased fabric that I wanted it to be lightweight because it gets very warm and stuff. And it matched the color perfectly. But it was perhaps just a little too lightweight of a fabric, because I actually did, and I work the event, so I'm a hostess, I table decorate, all right, I'm gonna go comfortable, no corset this year.
Yeah.
I bend over the wrong way and rip.
You do have split drawers.
And I have split drawers now. And there was nothing I could do because I'm like, I'm just going super cash and comfortable. I won't need my emergency sewing kit.
You always.
So, yeah. So, and I have a little skirt on, you know, but it doesn't, you know, and I'm like, so I'm just kind of standing up in the back, you know. Yeah,
completely
no,
aware of the air conditioning.
exactly. I'm like,
Nobody else.
I can't bend over to pour you tea. I'm sorry. Can't my sister?
Here,
You know?
just give me your cup.
I'm like,
There you
I'm just
go.
playing hostess without the tea. I'll fetch the tea because I can stand and do that, but I'm not going to bend over and pour that tea for you. I'm sorry. So then when we had to do tear down, I'm like, okay, no. I jumped in the restroom, changed into my civvies, and then I could do tear down because I'm like, oh my, oh, yes, wow.
That's awkward.
Yeah, I had really good posture the rest of that day. Sans corset.
There's something for that.
Yes. Oh my God. That was one of the worst
But
for
you guys,
myself.
corsets don't have to be like squeezing and uncomfortable. All they're supposed to do is just reform your shape just a bit. You don't have to tight lace into them and like, I can't breathe and I can't bend. You should be somewhat comfortable in them. You should be able to talk and breathe and move and sit and eat food and whatever.
Yeah,
Just remember that.
and one of the things that I also recommend is, because I'll travel to conventions, I don't know, I mean, I make lists now of all the costume pieces,
Yeah.
because I arrived in San Diego once for Gaslight Steampunk Expo without my chemise.
Yeah, I make lists too.
Yeah, and
How do you do it without a chemise?
well,
What did you do?
what I did was, honey, can I have your Star Wars t-shirt? Yes, because it was in the right color scheme, and it was, you know, it was really beat up, it was really old, you know, and stuff.
Like
But
Star Wars.
What now?
I know, I had to cut out a Star Wars t-shirt.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
To make a chemise, I basically cut it out so that it was like super long neck, cut the sleeves off,
Yeah, I can see that.
so that I could wear it, because never wear a corset directly against your skin,
I don't care
ladies.
what the TV or movie show.
Or-
Yeah, there's a series. What is it called? It's about America when Teddy Roosevelt was the governor of New York, and it's not The Mentalist. It's the something. It's
I don't know what-
anyway. It's there's a character and she takes her corset and puts it on over her bare skin, and I'm like, oh, what is she doing? And my husband's like, what? That's not how you wear a corset.
No.
What is she doing? That is terrible. It's not against your skin.
Yes.
Do you know how terrible? And he's like, okay.
Unfortunately, I had a pair of scissors, and yeah, I had, because for that, yes, I made sure that I traveled with a sewing kit, because I was actually still sewing in the car. I'm like, okay, I'll take first leg of the journey, and then once we hit Yuma, after Yuma, I'm just in the back sewing. Yeah. Fortunately, there was something that I could do. Another year, I actually did it again, same convention, but I had, my nightgown was actually kind of like a chemise.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna wear my nightgown.
Nobody
You
will know
know?
it. That's where
You
nightgowns
know?
came from.
Exactly. So, you know, but I'm like, really? I did it again. But yes, so
Oh, sorry.
sometimes you have to do something on the fly just to make things work. It is possible if you think creatively.
Yes.
How about you
Well,
guys? Any other?
Another thing that I know you sort of touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to expand on it because it's a personal experience I've had. So you really need to think a little bit about what materials that you're going to make a costume out of. If anything, it may be totally awesome to use a certain material because it looks amazing, because it just is perfect. But then 6 hours later, you want to tear it off your body and burn it.
Yes.
I made a Klingon costume once, and it was the first time I'd ever actually really sewn anything together properly with a sewing machine, and actually, you know, and the dumbest thing to start with, I don't know why I did that, but
Because it was cool.
it was. But I mean, the
We're
whole
passionate.
costume
Because
is
you're adventurous.
Yes.
the whole costume is made out of primarily vinyl. And so you have the vinyl vest, and on top of the vinyl vest are all of these tiny little 1.5-inch strips of gray vinyl that just get sewn, top stitched all the way around the thing, and that's kind of your stereotypical Klingon look. And all of the little like armor bits around the outside of the yoke section, which sort of has the big shoulder pads, and all the way down the bottom of the vest, I decided I was going to use metal. And I mean, there were a number of reasons why that was a dumb idea to begin with, but
Looked cool, but
it weighed about 15 pounds, right? Which, 15 pounds, I can't handle 15 pounds, that's nothing. Well, sure, 15 pounds isn't a lot of weight, but after 6 hours, it's a lot of weight.
okay, we'll try having boobs, okay? I'm sorry.
That's okay. But also, vinyl does not breathe.
No, it doesn't.
So the
Yeah.
heat on top of it, oh my goodness, like.
I made it sleeveless because I wasn't gonna put those big furry arm sleeves on this thing. I'm like, you know what, there was at least one Klingon in the movies that was sleeveless, it's canon, it's fine.
Dress for the weather too. I mean,
Right.
if you're gonna do this in 118-degree heat in Phoenix, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah. I
I
don't think I would've worn
discovered the
this in Phoenix.
SCA in 2003, no, 1993. It was 1993, and it was in Phoenix, and it was in July. And so I saw this thing, okay, I'm gonna go check this out. And I just fell in love because my costuming heart was like, I can wear costumes every week, this is great. So I got the little newcomer booklets, and I went to the library, and I found all these things, and I'm gonna make a coat hardy. Real simple coat hardy using all of my knowledge from costuming skills from the theater, so it will look right, but it may not be exactly right. But I don't know any better yet, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to make a coat hardy. So I go to the Goodwill and I find some cheap fabric that was probably curtain fabric. It looked like silk to me. So silk is good. Silk is one of those fabrics they used then. Okay, so I get this. I found some dye. I dyed it blue. I followed all the directions. I made this lovely coat hardy. It had tippets. I had a horned headdress. I had the veil. I had all of the things. And I get to the park, and I'm like really shy because I don't know if this is right. And this lady comes up to me and she hugs me, and her name is Dame Fiona. You probably, I don't know. Yeah. She comes up to me and she says, "You look wonderful. You just need a girdle." And I'm standing there like, I should have worn a girdle. Oh, and for a long time I'm like, oh my gosh. And then she goes, no, honey. It's a girdle, it's like a belt. It's a belt, you just need a belt.
It's a belt, so I'm like,
but the thing was that fabric was polyester. And so this was July. And then inside an hour, I was sweating, and guess what bleeds through polyester?
Rit dye.
And when I got home, I was blue. So yeah.
Yes.
That took a while to
come off.
Yeah.
Yes. If you're dyeing, definitely color check. Use the appropriate dye. RIT is not necessarily for synthetics. So that there are dyes that you can get for synthetics now. Yeah. That you can use if you do have something like that, so it does not turn you into a Smurf.
Yeah. My kids were delighted. They thought that was the best thing ever. Mom's blue.
How long did it take for the dye to wear off?
Like 5 days.
Yeah, because it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, yeah, definitely dress for the weather. Find out, because I never wear, like if I wear a corset, if it has a fashion fabric, it is a natural fiber. Even if it's, because people ask you, how can you wear something that's so hot? It's like, actually, it's not that bad wearing a steel-bone corset, if it's natural fibers.
Right.
But you
Cotton
put on...
wool, you've got cotton or linen or silk, even wool.
Coutil is the inner, I wouldn't do wool. Just
No,
because,
well, even wool in the winter is actually still very breathable. Yeah.
But
and
it's
if you have a lightweight wool as a skirt, it's also still breathable. believe it or not. It's amazing, because it's a natural fiber.
But if you have, say, like a synthetic fashion fabric on top of it, you know, it's not going to breathe. It will actually retain the heat, and then yes, you might be very uncomfortable.
Or blue.
Or blue, exactly, because
well,
you know.
blue doesn't make you uncomfortable.
Well, the neckline was like this, so you know you couldn't see like in a t-shirt, but my arms were.
Because of course it's long sleeves with a tighter sleeve.
Yes.
Because Lakota Hardy.
Yes, my arms were blue, mostly, you know, but all the rest.
But you learned. You learned from this horrible event.
Yes.
You now know.
Yes. Yes, and also I learned when I made my first I made a boned bodice, but I didn't know there was such a thing as steel boning. I used the acrylic boning, okay? And you know what, that stuff is the devil. Unless you're like really, you know, not like I have a figure here, and that does not hold that in. I need steel, right? And so what happens is it starts curling and poking. And it doesn't work. It's horrible. Don't ever use that.
And even if you actually are rail thin without any curves whatsoever, I don't recommend the acrylic featherweight boning for anything, because especially in Arizona, this heat will warp it so fast. Say you had a belt over it, you now have a permanent indent in that.
Right, and when it starts warping and curling, it makes your costume buckle in weird ways, and it just looks weird. And it's terrible. Don't ever use it.
Ever use it.
Steel boning is more expensive, but it's totally
and you can get the spiral steel, which is flexible.
Yeah.
So you actually get a little more movement this way because it's a spring that's been flattened into a straight.
Spiral. Yeah. Spiral.
Spirals.
And they have like online stores you can buy that stuff.
So, and you can get them custom made.
Yeah, but then like for medieval style, you have to have the flat metal strips.
Which is the spring steel.
Yeah, because they have more of a flat appearance. So no matter what, everything is mushed flat to have that cylindrical look that was so popular.
The silhouette for the period, so.
With everything kind of bountifully pushing out. I can't talk.
Try driving in one, right?
I'm really uncomfortable.
Yes. And your boobs are up to your neck because you can't drive in a car.
Oh my gosh, so many problems.
Yes. But that's how steampunks make friends. Like, you just drive up to the place and then in the parking lot, hey, can you help me with my corset?
I need someone to tie me up, please.
So, and also, you know what, another more stories. Now, I make sure that there are certain things that I don't carry on me when I'm in costume. Like, I have hidden pockets in my bustle skirts and stuff. Well, I had
better use
exactly.
for all that empty space.
So I had attempted lip gloss, you know, because it's dry, you know. I mean, I wanted to. So we're like, yeah, let's get on the train at old Tucson. Okay, I'm in my bustle dress, and I got tinted lip balm in my pocket in my bustle skirt. Slide into that, it explodes in my pocket. Exactly, because trying to fit it. So I highly recommend not carrying something that can explode if you're going to be going in costume into a confined space. But again,
I mean, if it was
you
your
learn from
phone,
our mistakes.
If it was your phone.
The phone was in there at the same time. Yeah, that was pleasant. Yeah, no. My husband had to spend the
sometimes
cleaning it and getting it out of my
I think
skirt.
Madam has a method of cleaning things that can't be hand washed. She cleans her things with vodka.
Yeah, like for corsets and stuff. Because corsets you really can't wash because of the steel inside. Otherwise, I mean, out here, things dry really quickly, so there's not as much of a chance of rusting. But that's not a chance you want to take with a corset.
It's expensive.
Or you get a broken busk. So what you can do is vodka, if you take it, she uses the cheapest vodka possible because, you know, you're not gonna drink it because it's that bad. But she can use it as a spritz to spritz the inside of the corset. It will kill all the bacteria, okay? And then she puts it on a towel, she will spritz it, she will dampen it, and she'll roll it up to absorb the excess moisture.
Well, and then that takes out any, you know, dirt or whatever.
And odor too, because of the
bacteria.
And the vodka cleans it. So, and you can do spot cleaning and stuff, like if you had a fashion fabric and stuff. But yeah, the vodka will clean your corset. She does a panel every once in a while on the care and feeding of your corset.
Every so often I'll bring costumes to the dry cleaner.
Yes.
And they're so fascinated. They want to be my friend now.
Yes, I actually now go to the same dry cleaner as Madam, just because they know. It's like, oh, yeah, no, okay, we gotcha.
Yeah, you know, it'll be extra, that's fine.
So, but then they're more used to the historical garments, and they handle the pleats and the trim far better than, you know, somebody who's not as exposed to those type of garments anymore. So,
it's not really a horror story per se, but it's related to what you were talking about.
Well, we know you're made of luck, so whatever.
But no, it's more just the fact that you were talking about people being used to the more historical garments. A little bit more recent, not so much more the time period where most of the SCA stuff would be, but like when suits were still being made with a significant amount of extra structure in the inside of them, which, I mean, that's been around since, that only really started going out of fashion in what, 70s, 80s, when they started making all of the white suits. And
yeah, I'd say the 80s with
okay.
the run on the Miami Vice.
Yeah,
That
that
everybody
makes sense.
wanted that.
No, in the late 70s, they were all leisure suits. Remember the safari suits?
Oh yeah. Double knit polyester is the devil.
So I made an Imperial officer uniform not too long ago, and I've made a few of them since the one I made for myself, and I've actually really enjoyed slowly getting better. But there's, the versions that I've been making thus far have only just had, you know, basic interfacing on the inside of them, which is fine, but they're also all polyester, and they're black. And no matter what I do, they're never going to sit quite as crisp as they should, because in the movie they were more bespoke suits, so they actually had a lot of that structure and whatnot on the inside. And I went to Joann's, and I'm like, I'm trying to find, you know, the right kind of material or canvas or whatever that they would use in this. And this
The horsehair.
No idea what I was talking
No,
about.
they're just
And I'm like, but
there.
you know, nobody does that unless you use like maybe interfacing or whatever. I'm like, no, it's not. It's in addition to that. And they didn't know what I was talking about.
They
And
won't.
so
It's
horsehair.
a specific type of horsehair. There is a difference between tailoring and seamstress, okay? And it's the understructure. Tailors are very specific. You can't, you know, some people actually think that a tailor is just a male seamstress.
It's a different thing.
It's completely
They
different.
make different things.
Exactly. And they have, and it's an extremely intense amount of, and it's all done by hand. And Madam has done some of this tailoring under some of the waistcoats that she started doing to build up the way a collar, you know, to have a collar or fall the correct way.
Right.
And it's a series of hatching that you do with like a horsehair kind of, I forget the name of it because I don't do tailoring, and it's a very specific interfacing. And for
buckram,
those suits,
No, buckram
No.
is
no,
Oh,
buckram. Oh, I do buckram. I do. But
I'm still learning a lot.
and they layer it up with hatches. I mean, it's just rows and rows and rows to get it to lay smooth. And they'll build those up to get the proper, it's not shoulder pads in those really, really nice suits. It is a structuring underlayer that you don't see.
It's an artistic sculpture.
Exactly.
Really.
And they use the hatching to give it that smooth
And
shape.
to keep it exactly in place.
Mm-hmm. And then you just don't see it because it's also lined.
Well, I have taken apart those suits, so I've seen those pieces.
Me
So,
too.
like, if you're curious about this, go to the thrift store and find really old suits and take them apart and look at them and see how they've done this.
Yeah. And
I found a really old tuxedo at the thrift store that happened to fit me perfectly. So I was Greta Garbo, Lily and Marlene for Halloween that year. It
we're
was
actually
great.
out of time. So,
Oh, we
but
are?
do we have any questions? Because I mean, I don't see too much of any.
Yeah.
Any advice for a new cosplayer at his first convention that has a costume malfunction? What should they do?
They have places now, usually. They have like a costume alley, they have like a fix and repair shop, and if you can't get there, then just stand there and
Then-
yell help, and other costumers will huddle.
Go to the fan tables.
Yeah.
We helped a sailor. It was Sailor Neptune or something, or Uranus, I
Yeah.
think, that came to the steampunk booth. It's like, can you help me? Yes, we can. And we whipped out the hand stitching, and there are people that will help you, and there are places now that will.
A lot of conventions have like a specific place for character first aid or costume first aid.
I know for a fact that the Rebel Legion carries a giant box full of things now.
So go to Star
We
Wars.
have that
Go
very,
to Star Wars.
we have lists of things that go in this box. So.
Yes.
That's
so
very organized.
that's
I'm very impressed.
But
And-
also wear it before you go. Wear it at home
Try
for a
it,
few
walk it
hours.
around,
and then
Test
walk
it.
around in
That's
it,
gonna help
test
a
it.
lot.
Your
Yeah.
shoes, really test your shoes. I mean, seriously, you guys, that is the worst.
Break them in.
Or just choose better shoes that maybe don't go as well.
I switched to orthopedics for
Yeah.
my steampunk, just because I just need the extra support in the arch now. It's like, oh, that's why my feet hurt so much. Okay.
Yeah.
Plus I have tendonitis in my foot.
Even if you want to do like movie accurate costumes, for conventions, you tend to want to break the rules just a little bit so that you can survive the entire
Right.
convention.
It's true, but like for instance, if you're supposed to be wearing boots and the boots you have are really terrible, get those patterns for fake boot covers. I mean, it still has the same look. It may not be perfect, but
I will be making some gaiters in my near future to make my orthopedics look just a little bit better. And plus, they can match my ensemble. Any other questions?
have fun.
Yeah, and
The only way to learn is to do, in my opinion. That's how I learn anyway.
Mhm.
People can show me stuff that will help, but just try. Start with simple, then build your way up. Don't start with the hardest one and you'll give up.
and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yes.
Oh my God, we will be happy to tell you, I highly recommend you do it this way, because if you do it this way, this will happen, and I know from experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like acrylic boating.
Exactly.
Yes, don't use that.
I actually did,
No.
I had a full-on course, and I thought, I'll just use acrylic boating for this little
No.
corselet
No.
that would just go over. It's completely non-structural at all, it's just for look.
No.
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
Then it starts warping and buckles. And it's
Yep,
terrible.
I'm like, that was foolish on my part.
Well, we do our best, and we learn from our mistakes.
Yes.
So thank you. That was really fun.
That was the perfect amount of water, so it lasted exactly the length of the